The biggest question I get from women is a lot of times like, why do I have cancer? And like, I'm being exposed to this stuff, but my husband doesn't. A lot of times the husband asks this. They're like, I live in the same house. I eat the same foods. What the heck? And so, a lot of it comes down to often the husband's not there as much in the same moldy environment. The husband has not been making people for, a while where, that's a huge strain on the body that depletes other resources. Oftentimes there's, genetic hiccups that mean that the woman maybe isn't methylating, isn't detoxing well.
You're listening to Biohacking with Brittany. I'm Brittany Ford, holistic nutritionist, wellness expert, and mama. This podcast is your space to explore the science, strategies, and soul of optimizing your health through every stage of life. Let's get into it. Welcome back. I am thrilled that you are listening. Today, I had the privilege of having Katrina Foe on my show. She is a board-certified nutritionist, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and cancer survivor. This was such an interesting discussion as we really got into what it means to look at the root cause for different health issues. We talked about functional lab testing in a lot of detail, actually, which ones she likes, which ones she doesn't like, and what she recommends. We talked about detoxification and personalized nutrition and hormonal balance. She's the creator of the Cancer Freedom Program, which helps women take back control of their health with holistic, science-backed strategies. Katrina's approach is grounded in both clinical insight and the belief that mindset and lifestyle are key pillars of lasting wellness, which I completely agree with. This was such a cool episode. I can't wait for you to listen. I'm diving more and more into functional health and functional medicine, as I really think this is the space that I see health and wellness moving to. And that goes hand in hand with lab testing and at-home testing, if we can, because data really can inform us to make healthier decisions and navigate complexities of especially of something like cancer. And so that's kind of what we dove into today. And I think you're going to get a lot out of it. We obviously talked about, mindset and the nervous system and chronic stress and also what that might look like as well. And there was a lot we covered here. And I just love these types of episodes because I always learn something and take something away from it as well. If you are enjoying the show, I'm so glad to hear that. I actually just got a DM. I'm just going to read this. I was not planning to do it, but you know what? I screenshotted it. So here we go. I got this DM. And this woman wrote, Dr. Stuart Fishbein spoke so much truth. I feel like the last 2 episodes really spoke to me. I love what you're doing. Bravo. And you know what I actually responded to her saying, and I'm going to read this. I said, oh, thanks so much. I'm really changing how I'm doing the podcast. It's all just off the cuff and unscripted and raw now. And ever since I stopped doing it how I was supposed to, I get compliments from every guest after the interview about how easy it was and refreshing for them. I'm glad it's landing for you. That is true. I've totally switched how I've been doing the podcast in case you haven't noticed. There's a bit more structure now in the actual format, but in the interviews, I've really removed a lot of structure. It's very organic and flows, and I create notes before, of course, but I don't really ask specific questions anymore. I don't ask these things that ChatGPT might write for me, that type of thing. I don't do that because I want to have a real conversation. I want it to flow, and wherever it goes, it goes. I feel like I know a lot about health and wellness at this point that I can kind of talk to anybody about health and wellness. And so I don't need these, give me your top 10 tips for a healthy nighttime routine. Like, no, you can Google that. That's not what this podcast is about. This is a place where these are just raw and honest conversations. And I'm excited to continue down that rabbit hole. And like I said in that DM, the amount of compliments that I've received from my guests since I've made this shift about 2 months ago has been actually very surprising. Like, I had the founder of Seed on my show, Seed is this like massive probiotic. I'm sure you know of it. And that was an incredible interview. And afterwards, she was like, that was such a refreshing interview. Oh my goodness. She's like, I am so tired of telling my founder story. Thank you for not asking me. And thank you for asking me about other things. and just taking such a raw approach to it without making it about you or over talking. And it was really cool feedback from somebody so successful. So that's kind of what we're doing here. This is a place for raw conversations. And I know you guys like this because I created these episodes about pregnancy when I was pregnant, and they were solo episodes, and they were very, very unfiltered. And I get DMs once a week about those episodes still. And that was recorded in, 2023, early 2024. And I can link all those in the show notes. I did one per trimester, and it was like the realities of being in your first trimester. And then I did a follow-up episode of like, here's how to optimize, here's the biohacks and the supplements and things like that. And you guys loved that format. And I got so many compliments of like, holy smokes, thank you so much for talking about this. Thank you for talking about what it's like to be pregnant in your second trimester and the feels and what your body might look like and all of these things without trying to make it sound like special and throwing like fairy dust on it and, all that type of stuff. So that's kind of like the vibe that I'm doing with the podcast now is like, let's just be freaking for real about things. I don't want to, I'm tired of these like question and answer podcasts that are just like too formal for me. So that's not what we're about. Anyway, glad you're listening. Thank you so much. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave a 5-star review. It really does help. This is a small podcast. I have a small platform and it is growing. I'm not necessarily looking to be the next number one podcaster in the world. Definitely not. But I do appreciate every review that I get and every DM that I get. We're a small community of people who care about optimizing their health, and it does mean a lot to me. And speaking of, Optimize Her retreat is out by the time you guys are listening to this. So if you want to join me in Costa Rica in March next year, March 2nd to 7th, over the full moon, you and I are going to hang out. There's going to be 12 women, and it's a place for healing and rest and recovery and time and space for yourself. So while we are going to do, an IV trip and a digital detox massage and hiking and a functional movement class and yoga and a cacao ceremony and a full moon ceremony, I have quite a lot planned. It's actually about you taking time for yourself away from your family, away from your work, and away from your busyness and the chaos that can be in your life. This is an investment in yourself as a woman, as a mom maybe, but as a woman. And I really, really encourage you, if you're listening to this and you're like, holy, I feel this tug on my heart. And it's kind of like reminding you in the back of your head, you're like, oh yeah, Brittany has that retreat. Oh my gosh, should I go? You should go. Listen to that voice. Listen to that voice, because it's not about me. It's not about being in Costa Rica. It's about you taking time for yourself and investing in yourself and you seeing the benefits afterwards, the benefits of, maybe working through something that's kind of been sitting on you lately, or releasing any of the sadness or the anger or the frustration that you might be feeling, or the burnout. Oh my gosh, or the stress. So if this is speaking to you and you're like, I want to be in Costa Rica next March for 6 days, I want to be sitting on a quartz mountain, poolside, talking about optimizing your health with Brittany and other women who are very similar. Yeah, heck yeah. And it's so easy, you guys. I made it so as easy as I could. Okay. To secure your spot, there's a $500 deposit. And then there's 2 payments. One comes out November 1st. The second one comes out February 1st. And that's it. You get to pick, do you want to do double occupancy or single occupancy for your room? And that's it. Like, there's no, you have to pay everything right now. There's like, I even included airport transfer in my package for you, so that when you arrive in Costa Rica, you're like, I'm putting my hands up. I'm taken care of. Take me away for 6 days and then drop me back off. I'm including that in the package, you guys. It's very rare that retreats include airport transfer, and it's not cheap. So it's cutting into my profit, which is fine because I think the experience matters the most for you. I want you to be taken care of from the moment you land to the moment you leave. Only thing you have to pay for in addition is flights, of course. I don't know where you're flying from. So I hope to see you in Costa Rica. Oh my gosh, I freaking love Costa Rica. I could not wait to go back. It's a very special place, and this is a very special event, and you are a special woman listening to this. So if you feel the call, now's the time to jump in. 12 spots. As of right now, 2 spots have been taken, so there's 10 left. I don't know. By the time you listen to it, I don't know how many spots are going to be left. And if you book right now before, let me think about this, August 9th, I think it is, before it goes public. Yep. You will actually get a additional one-on-one coaching consultation with me a month before, where we're going to dive into your health and we're going to talk about biohacking and health optimization for you as well, which is about a $400 value. And that's sweet. So there's a consultation while we're on the retreat together, of course, but you're going to get a bonus one. So you're getting a lot of time with me, and I cannot wait for that. So if you're listening to this, and you are like, I want to sign up, like I said, the link isn't currently public. Message me on Instagram and I will give it to you. I am giving it to like these select people who are really deep into my content and, avid listeners. Message me and I will send it to you and you can sign up. I'm serious. I really want to see you there. I want to hug you. And I just want to be in the same room as you kind of work through what's been bugging you and heal and kind of let go of everything. Guys, this is so special. Even just when I talk about it, I can't help but smile because I love Central America. We're working on spending our winters south. So this is a really big deal. This is probably the first step towards, I don't know, maybe I open my own retreat one day, like my own retreat center one day. Imagine a longevity and biohacking clinic in Costa Rica. By the way, just going to pop this in here. The last thing I'll say about this is Costa Rica is one of 2 countries in the world that has made stem cells legal. Entirely legal. Not like, the US, there's workarounds and all these things that you can do. Same with Mexico. No. Like full on legal. Okay. And I think that says a lot about what is happening in Costa Rica. So the place that we're actually doing the retreat at, you can actually get exosomes done. Now, I have my own opinions about exosomes. That's for another show, but that's an add-on. If you're like, yeah, I'm ready for exosomes, that's how deep into biohacking you are, that option is there for you. Okay. Message me if you're feeling this call and you're like, yep, I'm going to be there. See you in Costa Rica, Brittany. I can't wait. Send me a message right now. And a quick shout out to Spermidine Life. Speaking of longevity, if you're not taking Spermidine yet, what are you doing? Ignore the funny name. I know it has sperm in it. It's fine. Moving on. It is actually great for activating autophagy in the body, which is our cleaning up process to be able to get out the old cells and bring in the new. This process kind of diminishes as we get older, especially around the age of 30, 35. It's kind of when it starts to decline. And if we take something like spermidine, which is natural in our bodies, we can increase the levels, we can increase autophagy. Now, a lot of you ask me, hey, are you taking this while breastfeeding? Did you take this while pregnant? The answer is yes, I did. And on the bottle, it will say consult a healthcare practitioner because legally they have to say that. I spoke to their team about this, even on the podcast episode that I did with them. They said, the one woman I spoke to, she's like, I was pregnant. I took it every time. I think it's totally fine. I had 0 issues. It is something that's natural in your body and you're increasing the levels. It's not like taking a herb, ashwagandha or something that you don't really take when you're pregnant because you have to be careful with. This is not that. You already have spermidine in your body. You're just increasing the levels. So Spermidine Life is the best. Discount code is biohackingbrittany in all capitals. And I hope to see you in Costa Rica. Message me if you're interested and enjoy this podcast episode. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And stay tuned for the next one. Today, we are talking about all things cancer with Katrina Foe, who is a mom of 7, which is incredible. We're definitely going to talk about that. but she's also a nutritionist, a functional and diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and has a really beautiful health journey that I want to dive into. So, Katrina, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Brittany. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I want to talk about you having 7 kids, first of all. My
Yeah.
baby just turned 1 and it feels like a full house. And like the idea of having 7 kids running around, like, what is that like, dude? Like, tell me everything.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a tipping point when you get to having a certain number where they start helping and I homeschool them as well. So they're doing their thing and it's not quite as crazy as you would think. I think having like 3 is actually way harder.
Yeah. Cause they just start like raising themselves or each other, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. My
Yeah.
youngest, like I think I probably changed her diapers like a handful of times because the older girls always were fighting over her like she was their doll.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. That's fun. That's awesome. Um, and so how has that been being a mom of 7, having gone through what you've gone through in terms of your cancer, and your whole health journey in general? Like, it's so different once you're responsible for 7 other human beings.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was really interesting because I actually found the cancer when I was nursing my fifth.
Okay.
So if you do the math, there's some interesting dynamics there. But I had a plug duct and I didn't think anything of it. There's like a golf ball size lump. It's my fifth. I've had plug ducts before. I had my toolbox. I knew what to do. And when it resolved, the golf ball was still there. And even at that point, I wasn't super concerned because the breast tissue of a nursing mom is shifting but my mom started pushing for me to look into this more, and it was cancer, which I was not expecting. I I mean, we had already been doing all the stuff. We had already had some really profound food as medicine journeys. And, I mean, literally, we had moved to Idaho so that we could raise our own animals to have really clean sourced food, be away from, the smog and different things like that. We were eating, organic, completely from scratch, all the stuff, making our own chapsticks and things. So the idea that I had cancer at 37 just seemed mind blowing, to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because you're doing all the right things. So then how can someone who's doing all the right things end up with something like cancer?
Yeah. And this is what I see all the time with my clients. I only work with middle-aged women where, this is what you don't see, but you may not have any symptoms of, you may not have anything on your radar for it. This is why I do the testing. So what I did as part of my journey and what I do with clients now is, there's all these things that are known in the research to cause cancer, drive cancer, the things that you hear are like the known carcinogens in the food and such, but no one's looking at them. But we have this amazing functional testing that we can use to see like, is this an issue for you? And, it's never, I can't stress this enough, it's never one thing. There's usually 7 or 8 major things that are off that allow this kind of overwhelm of the immune system so that it can't do what it's supposed to do in terms of addressing rogue cancer cells. So this way you can find out like what are your issues specifically and address those.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't have to tell us all, but I'm so curious, what are some of those 7 or 8 things? Like, is heavy metals one of those probably?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Heavy metals would be one. So there's 10 kind of basic areas. Metabolic balance. So looking at the blood sugar, I was totally insulin resistant, and that doesn't feel bad. That feels really good to have lots of extra energy running around. I had no idea, especially since I was eating healthy carbs like squash and beans, not, I wasn't eating, breads and such. The mental emotional well-being is a big one. Usually the year prior to a diagnosis, there's some, emotional trauma, whether a loss of a loved one, a job, abusive relationship. It shows up different ways, but that's a big deal. The microbiome, so, parasites, indigestion, those kinds of things. Uh, Inflammation, oxidative stress is one. So there's specific markers that we can see that, the house is on fire. And of course, you want to dig into that as well. But we can use these also to help monitor if things are starting to get out of control. Hormone balance. This is one you hear a lot with women. I was estrogen dominant, which is super common, but not always the case. And we can actually see even more detailed the pathways that these estrogens are being cleared with, which is showing to now be even more significant than just the estrogen dominance and such. Another bucket is stress and circadian rhythms. So beyond just like, are you getting good quality sleep, checking your aura ring and things, looking at like the adrenal hormones and how are they functioning with specific biomarkers is really important. And then that toxic load that we were talking about. So like you said, heavy metals is a big one. Um, Chemicals. So phthalates, BPAs, glyphosate are some of the common ones, but there's so many more that I'm not even going to try to
Yeah.
pronounce. And then mold, no one's talking about mold. This is a big one for me. And, these are known carcinogens. People go, they do their standard of care. No one checks them and they go home and they're still living in a moldy house. And I was just like, oh, I hope it doesn't come back. But
Mhm.
why wouldn't it come back if you're still getting the same toxins coming into your system? So the sexy thing with toxins isn't to talk about stopping the inflow and doing the detective work, but that's where the real
Yeah.
emphasis should be. It's not just getting it out, it's stopping it from coming in.
Mm.
Okay, so
Mm.
yeah. Yeah, there's three more. I'll go through those quick. The immune
Yeah.
modulation. So if there's low vitamin D levels, autoimmune issues, like a viral load going on in the background, those are important to address. Angiogenesis. So this means that the tumor actually can be getting your body to make more blood vessels so it can get more fuel, more blood sugar to grow more. And we can see these markers and address them naturally. And then genetics. So this is, I can't stress this enough. This is not the genetics that your oncologist would run. These are low penetrance genes to see things like how you're making your vitamin D, how you're processing your blood sugar and insulin, how you're methylating. These are really important and they can help you, especially as a mom, to understand long term what kind of interventions for your family would be appropriate and needed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so those are the 10.
Yeah. Ever wish you could slow down aging at the cellular level? Well, turns out you can. Spermidine is a natural compound found in foods like wheat germ and natto, and that's been shown to trigger autophagy, your body's innate cellular renewal process. Think of it as like spring cleaning for your cells, supporting longevity, mitochondrial health, and even hormonal balance. I've been using Spermidine Life as part of my daily biohacking routine to support energy, skin health, and healthy aging from the inside out. It's the world's first clinically tested spermidine supplement made with pure, high quality ingredients you can actually trust. Ready to upgrade your wellness and age with more vitality? Head to the link in my show notes or on my website and use my discount code BiohackingBrittany for a special discount. We love that because you deserve to feel your best at every single age. Yeah, I love that. And I'm super curious about all of it and have like dabbled in different ways in them. But really, like what we're talking about here is a root cause approach of like,
Yeah.
there could be, I guess, 10 root causes of the cancer. Or do you think it can funnel down into something that's like the ultimate root cause, even below or like, I guess, like underneath those 10 things that it could be?
Yeah. So with those 10 kind of buckets, if you will, that I just went through really fast, there's going to be when we do all the testing. I don't mess around with partial testing because then you miss things. So there's usually 7 or 8 of those by the time someone actually has a tumor that have been going wrong. So again, our body is designed to really have like backup systems for our backup systems. And it's not missing things when there's only 1 or 2 things. It's when there's 7 or 8 that it's like, I can't handle this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like really it's cellular misfunction or dysfunction, I
Yeah,
guess, in just different ways. And I'm
100%.
curious about the kind of testing you do, because I've done so many different tests. So is it like there's a microbiome test that you send and a blood work test and a genetic test and a mold test, like with all different companies, and you kind of like package it all together for a client? Or like, how do you do it so it's not super overwhelming for somebody who's like, oh my gosh, it could be one of these 10 things and I have to do 10 tests? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, it is. I'm very specific with which companies I use to make sure we have the most cutting edge, most markers, because these lab tests are continually evolving and getting better, which is exciting. So we have 5 different tests. We do, a cheek swab for the genetics. We do urine samples for both the toxins and for the hormones. And most of my clients are still cycling. So we're looking at the entire cycle, which also shows our adrenals and some organic acids and such. We're doing a stool sample and then a very large blood work.
Right.
So
Right.
it's
And
a lot.
are you using the Dutch panel
Yes, for sure.
for that?
Dutch
Yeah.
cycling, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done that one. Very interesting, but also a lot of information. And
Mhm.
anytime anyone talks to me about doing the Dutch panel, I'm like, work with somebody who can actually help you understand it, because you're going to get all this information about like organic acids and precursors to this hormone and that hormone. And like, you're probably not going to know what to do with that information if something is flagged as off. Like, and you need to work with an expert like yourself who can actually be like, okay, this is what this means. This is how we can tweak it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I used to train as an instructor for a functional medicine company for many years, and that's the test that we would get the most questions and the most confusion from practitioners about.
Oh,
But
wow.
I literally just had a client come to me about a week ago, and she had her Dutch test. She'd been working with a practitioner for a couple years, so she had multiple Dutch tests. And I'm looking back at them, and she said, "Yeah, I have all this estrogen dominance." I'm looking at the test. I'm like, you are still cycling, and your hormones are in the toilet. Like her estrogen were all like in menopausal range. I don't know what her practitioner was smoking, but she was not interpreting them right at all. And it was just very sad to me that she had paid all this money. She wasn't getting anywhere with her hormone symptoms. And I'm like, well, of course not, because we don't need to be taking DIM. You already have low estrogen, not high estrogen. It was just completely misinterpreted. So, yeah, like you said, you want somebody that knows what they're doing with those. That one's a very tricky test.
Yeah, that is a very tricky one. And when you're kind of working with these women, are you ever surprised when you do these testing? Or is it like there's this intuition that's like, oh, no, your microbiome is probably off? And like, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the more
Yeah.
clients you work with, you kind of start to see a trend, especially when you're dealing with one thing like cancer.
Yeah. So before I was exclusively cancer, I would agree with that.
Hmm.
Now, I mean, the clients that come to me, they're coming and they have no symptoms. I didn't have any I mean, when I got cancer, I was a little tired and I had some stubborn pounds, but I mean, I was a new mom as well, like, that didn't seem abnormal. But my clients, they're coming with no symptoms, so it's hard to, like, get a good guess. I mean, from the history, if they're saying things like, "Yeah, I've been exposed to mold," then it's not crazy if mold shows up on their test, but I'm surprised all the time with some of the stuff. Like I had a client come back and I suspected there was some mold, but there was 15 high levels and then 4 more moderate. And I'm like, holy smokes, like that's like way more than I thought it would be. And the different chemicals is always interesting to see what shows up. I think that's the area that probably is the most surprising because you start digging into where these chemicals would come from. And it's like weird things that like, you know, gasoline fumes. I'm like, where are you getting that? Or, this comes from some manufacturing of weird stuff that like, how did you get exposed to that? And so that's where we need to dig into like making sure it stops before we start worrying about detoxing it even.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to do that chemical test actually. Like, I don't know. I don't think I've done one like that before. No, I've done heavy metals, but I've never done something like that. And I try to have a clean home with like no plastic and like
Hmm.
clean, really like natural cleaning products and everything like that. But I think it probably would be eye-opening to still see like, hey, this might be something that's a little high.
Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing about this, Brittany, this is so most of the women that come to me, they're like you're talking about, where they've already done some things. They're probably not using Lysol and Maybelline and things. They've got the cleaner versions. But what you'll find, especially when like the stakes are raised with, a cancer diagnosis, is it can become a full-time job researching everything and like trying to figure out like, okay, what else do I need to replace? And it gets very expensive. So, having the toxin panel, it's like, oh, XYZ are my issues. Let's focus on those. And then you can get the majority of the toxic burden off of your body without having to chase every single rabbit hole blindly because you don't know if that's the issue for you or maybe something else. And that's the thing with cancer. It's that gnawing away in the back of your mind of, did I get it all? Is this also an issue for me? That I feel like the testing for me really helped kind of put those fears at ease and help me rest in the process.
Mhm. Yeah, there is something very, what would the word be? It's like very helpful when you get testing, not just helpful, but like almost like a sigh of relief of like, oh, this is the thing. I
Yeah,
have an answer now
you're not
because
crazy.
you're not crazy. Like, oh, I did think that this might be causing this.
Hmm.
And that's true for anything, like not just cancer, like even in my own experience with what I've been through, like it's it, it's a breath of fresh air. It feels like there's
Yeah,
like a weight lifted off of your shoulders of like, wow, I think I actually might have found one of the answers. Because before that, like you're saying, it's so overwhelming.
yeah,
Like, and you just drive yourself crazy and then you spend a ton of money and doing all of these things that ultimately actually might not really be moving the needle.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm. And then for the mold testing, how does that work? Like, is that yeah, how does that work? Because I don't think I've ever done mold testing. I'm just thinking back on all the things I've done. Is that a personal test, or do you get someone to come in and look at your house and assess the house?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always recommend testing yourself first, because I mean, it's a big deal. So it's a lot cheaper to start with yourself, first off.
Okay.
So it's a simple urine test, and the test I use actually combines the same sample for the heavy metals, the toxins, I mean, like the chemical toxins and the mold all at once. So again, going back to simpler testing and not being overwhelmed, that's one of the things. But once you see like all the strains that might be high or are not high, that gives you clarity. So if it's high, then you want to go and get a really good mold inspector and remediator to make sure it's not in your house, your primary living space. And it can be other places. I've had clients that get clean houses, and one lady, it was her mother-in-law's house that she was getting exposed from. She was going over there, helping her mother-in-law every day and spending several hours there. I've had clients where it's their office space, their workspace. So it's just wherever you're at a lot. And the biggest question I get from women is a lot of times like, why do I have cancer and like I'm being exposed to this stuff, but my husband doesn't? A lot of times the husband asks this. They're like, I live in the same house. I eat the same foods. What the heck? And so, a lot of it comes down to often the husband's not there as much in the same moldy environment. The husband has not been making people for, a while where, that's a huge strain on the body that depletes other resources. Um, Oftentimes there's, genetic hiccups that mean that the woman maybe isn't methylating, isn't detoxing well, or it's strained like when you're making babies. So this doesn't have to be like across the board everyone in the house has this issue. Sometimes people can process it better than others, and it's just
Mhm.
that's where we want to see that, what's that perfect storm of all these things that are other factors contributing to why she isn't detoxing the mold well.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find in general that women are more prone to cancer than men? Like, I don't know the stats on that, but I'm just wondering if that's actually something that might be going on.
um I don't know. I think I have a skewed perspective probably because I only deal with women. I get middle-aged women all day long. I don't get women in their 70s and 80s. And I think that has to do with like the next generation doesn't really want to look at the root cause. They're really focused on do what your doctor says. They're
Mhm.
not everyone. But generally, the younger women are more inquisitive, looking into this stuff more. And I think the men tend to be more like the older generation. They do their doctor says, which is surprising. The women, I think, are digging into understanding health and getting into food as medicine a lot deeper. So that's
Yeah.
where I think it comes from. I don't know if the actual numbers are more women get cancer, but I think more are open to this philosophy.
Yeah. I think women in general are just more into wellness and self-care and health,
100%.
like a very holistic perspective. Whereas men, it might be much more simple of like working out, sports, I take the supplements my wife gives me type of, you know what I mean? Type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And the
So
women I feel are more intuitive. Um, the women that I get are having a very hard time being okay with not knowing why this happened. They're young, they're not 70 or 80, and the idea that they're gonna live for another 40, 50 years and just sit there and, cross their fingers and hope that it doesn't come back, like, they're not okay with that. They wanna be proactive and do something to make sure that it doesn't come back by looking at some of these things and
right.
changing.
Right. Let's talk about the mental load of
Mm.
this because I feel like women, especially moms, carry such a massive mental load. Like, and there's so much of yourself if you have your career, if you have a house, if you have people that you're responsible for. And then to add a cancer diagnosis onto that and then try to figure out why it came and then how to fix it and how to prevent it in the future. Like how how are women actually mentally handling this?
Yes, that's a great question. So a lot of it, yeah, there's so much. They have to start doing some prioritizing and saying, "Okay, I need to let this go at this point, and I need to focus on this." So, for example, um, I mentioned that I homeschool. When I got cancer, that had to stop for a season, and my kids just ran around crazy. No, I'm just kidding. But we didn't do school for like a good year, and I would just give them other things to keep them occupied, but I didn't have the mental capacity to be researching all this stuff for myself and changing all these areas based on my test results and, be grading tests and looking at what they're doing and teaching them things. So, being really strategic of what can I get off my plate? What can a friend do for me? What can someone help me with? And then also having some kind of therapy, and this looks different for different people to deal with that. So I personally find that there's lots of different things out there you can choose. But something that's not going to just open up a can of worms. Let's start talking about your trauma from your childhood. And then, oh, it's 60 minutes, you're not done. That's okay. I'll see you in 3 weeks. Like that's not okay with a cancer diagnosis because if they're anxious, if they're depressed, if these things start coming out and they're not resolved, they're not going to do their protocols. They're not gonna get dinner on the table, right? They're not gonna be able to be there, for their protocols and for their own self-care if that's, not wrapped up. So there's a lot of different components there, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it is important to have some sort of mental support,
Mhm.
therapist, counselor, anything like that. And it's interesting what you say actually about letting it go and like how would you manage after 60 minutes and then going back to the rest of your life. Like even now I like when I have therapy and it's online and I'm just upstairs doing it and then you close your laptop and you're like, okay, I just talked about this really deep thing and now I'm going to like hang out with my kid. I'm like, okay, I'll just like integrate all of the things I've learned some other time, who knows when. Um, yeah, that's a lot. And it's yeah, I'm just trying to like put myself in the shoes of a woman who's dealing with this. And hopefully she has also a supportive network around her as well to also help with that mental load.
Yeah, yeah, it's gotta be there. It just makes such a difference because what I see is that the clients that are not implementing these strategies based on what their tests show, they don't get, the Titanic turned around, so to speak, fast enough. And so being able to really implement is essential. And if they mentally, emotionally are not able to do that, they've got to either get stuff off their plate or they've got to bring in help. I had a friend whose daughter came in and cleaned for me for a season and like things that I couldn't do because my kids at that time were littler and they couldn't help with as much. They still helped a lot, but yeah, you've got to be resourceful and looking outside the box for sure.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've had probably some pretty profound stories of like women being able to put their cancer into remission.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, all the time. I get quite a few clients that are wanting to do things all natural. Quite a few, like I'd say maybe a third are doing it like after they've done standard of care. So they're already in remission. They just want to make sure it doesn't come back kind of thing. They want to know what
Right.
was, yeah. And then I've got about a third that are doing it integratively. So they're doing it concurrent with standard of care whatever they're liking. So, integrating some chemo or surgery or something like that, maybe tamoxifen, depending on what's being recommended. And so the timing would shift a little bit, but I mean, standard of care is looking at make the tumor go away. I'm looking at why was the tumor allowed to be there in the first place? So they're different questions and you want to get to both of those. But when you start doing that work, not only do things go in remission, but it gives you that piece of understanding of what you got to keep your eye on going forward. You know yourself at a much deeper level to know what your weak links are, what you just need to kind of keep in place as your self-care ongoing. And that way you don't have to chase every single thing that the bloggers and the Instagram are talking about are the cool things for self-care because you can't do it all. You only have 24 hours in a day and you have to pick. And so then the question is, kind of like the chemicals, what are you going to be strategic and intentional about choosing to keep in your regime of healthcare for you?
Yeah. I love that. And that's really cool actually that people come to you at different points in their journey. It just shows that like the holistic approach and the root cause approach can actually be applied no matter what. Like
100%. Yeah.
you can benefit no matter where you are in that space.
You can. And most people, unfortunately, aren't in the mind frame. They want to do things like this preventatively, but usually they don't have enough pain, if you will, to actually be motivated to take the time, money, energy, and stuff that it does to prevent it, which I would love it if everybody would do that and not have to go through what I did. But, sometimes we have to get to that point where we're motivated.
Mhm. You mentioned trauma earlier, and I'm trying to remember the book that I was reading about this. But essentially, I remember reading this book about certain health issues show up in the body in relation to certain traumas that people can have. So, if it's trouble maybe from childhood, like there was like sexual assault or something, it might show up in the body in certain regions. And like there actually is a correlation. I mean, I think it's in multiple books, but I'm curious if you kind of ever see that in your practice of like, if someone has maybe experienced a lot of maybe like death or sorrow or things like that, does it show up as a certain type of cancer? Are there any trends like that that you've seen?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, the emotional trauma being stored in our tissue and driving cancer, I think is usually a new concept for most people. So like the right side of your body is more your masculine side and the left side is more your feminine. So especially when we're talking about breast tissue where there's a right breast and a left breast, that can be really significant to connecting to trauma. And that's almost always directly connected with like, say, like it's in your left breast, like there's something with your mother or like or with yourself, versus like if it's your right breast, maybe there's a conflict with your father or your husband or something that was trauma. Um, Oftentimes in the like cervix, there's trauma like a sexual assault or something. Not always, but something along that genre. So there's a lot of connections that way. If the thyroid is, the area, like a lot of times it's like the person has issues with expressing themselves and having their voice heard, so there's some definite connections. And then there's even connections with like the toxins. So like different, if people have root canals, the meridians connecting to different areas of the body where they've had those root canals, and those areas getting cancer, very strong drivers.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, because root canals, I feel like are seen as just like a standard thing that everybody does. But I think I think there's actually a documentary about how they are
Yeah.
they're not harmful. I haven't seen the documentary, but I'm curious about that actually. Hmm.
Yeah, I know Dr. Veronique Desaulnier talks a lot about it, and that was something I've recommended many clients. If you've got a root canal, go get it taken out at all costs, because it's dead, decaying tissue that can actually get right into that bloodstream and disrupts those meridians and such. So there's a lot of connections with those. There's nothing good from a root canal. I mean, I'll just say if I had an area that needed a root canal, I would just be like, get that tooth out. No, I'm not
Yeah.
messing with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So when you were going through your own healing journey, what did you kind of start with? Like, so you got this cancer diagnosis, you were with your fifth child. How did you even start like approaching all of these different buckets that could potentially be causing the cancer?
Yeah. So my big thing, at first I was in the middle of weaning very quickly, to try to, get to do anything. And I just put it on the table. I was so perplexed, like, how did this happen? Clearly something I was doing was not right. And so I'm like, let's put it all on the table and reevaluate everything. Let's start from, square one. And everything at that point was talking about like juicing and raw plants and such like that. So I actually immediately went down to Mexico and thought, okay, while I figure this out, I can get some therapy and such. And when I got there, I had read the books and I understood what they were doing, but I had a lot of questions, and I kept asking questions, and they didn't have answers for me. And by the third day, the owner of the clinic came in and was like, my staff says that you've been asking a lot of questions, Katrina. And well, I think you just need to trust in the process. And I was kind of like shocked, because I felt like if I was going to alternative stuff, like they would be more open to me wanting to understand things. And yeah, I mean, we're not talking about a wart, we're talking about cancer. And I'm young with lots of kids. And I was like, well, I need answers. This is kind of my life we're talking about. And he just looks at me. He's like, well, I think this isn't the right fit for you. You should leave.
Wow.
I know. So I got kicked out of a cancer clinic, which, I mean, it's a funny story now, but it wasn't funny at the time. Um, and I was like super engorged. They're telling me I have to eat oatmeal every day, and that's a galactagogue. And I'm like, my boobs are literally going to explode if you give me oatmeal right now. And then they kick me out, and I'm just like dripping in the airport going home. Like it was a big hot
Oh,
mess. So I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. I was just like free falling. And I did a juice fast, which was probably one of the worst things I could do. It was messing my blood sugar up tremendously. I thought I was going to eat my husband at the time. Um, and then a friend introduced me to functional medicine. And I was super grateful, because I had never heard of that. I had never done any testing of any sort. Although we had had food as medicine experiences enough to have me step outside the standard of care, I didn't know about testing. And when I heard about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. I don't want to guess. I don't want to mess around. I want to understand this.
mm,
And so I started doing, with this practitioner, all the testing that I'm talking about now. Now, some of the tests were different because, like I mentioned, there's better tests coming out every year, but it was the same kind of concept. And Brittany, I was so surprised the things that showed up for me, because, like I said, I had no symptoms, and like estrogen dominance and insulin resistance, and like crazy low vitamin D, which I had been taking vitamin D, but I didn't know that I had a problem transforming it into the active form, like genetically. And I mean, so there's a lot of stuff showing up. The mold was an issue, all these things that I had no idea about. And addressing those, it seemed like a very clear path once you know what the issues are.
Right. Right. And so how long was that healing journey for you once, like from the beginning when you got the first diagnosis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my path was a little circuitous. By the time I found functional medicine, it was a ways in, and then it was funny. I did my protocol for quite a few months, and I was like, dude, I got this. Like, I was feeling probably a little arrogant and confident, and I'm like, yeah, I got this. And that's when God, at a retreat, put on my heart to go home and be with my husband. And I'm like arguing. I'm like, I just did a hormone retest. I think that's not a good idea. I know what time of the month that is. Any which way, I did, and I got pregnant, which is not what you're supposed to do when you have cancer, right? So, I mean, it's just like the whole thing. It was like throwing everything up in the air again. And I get very sick. Hyperemesis gravidarum. So I was in a ketogenic state, which is one of the pieces that I didn't have dialed in with my therapist at the time, because I couldn't eat anything. And a lot of the supplements I couldn't take, but some of them I could. And it was very interesting looking at now. I think there's some ferroptosis going on because of the pregnancy, which I've heard from 3 different alternative cancer practitioners that pregnancy has been seen to do this, which is crazy because everyone's like aborting babies. And I did the opposite. But a month before delivery, and I'm not a very well endowed lady, I could tell that the whole tumor was gone. So I nursed him. We had a great delivery, and then I got back on track with like, okay, I need to finish all the other stuff, like the detox work that I couldn't do while I was pregnant.
Right.
And so the whole journey, like it took about a little over a year before the tumor was gone, but I don't really consider that done because I still had issues to deal with, the root causes. So it just depends on how you count.
Wow. Wow.
That's
That's
a
really
little
beautiful.
weird.
No, 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 no. I think that's really beautiful. And it's really interesting that um you intuitively felt like you wanted to go be with your husband and then you got pregnant and your next baby ended up actually just being a part of your healing journey in a
Mhm.
really cool in a cool way. And I bet there are a lot of women who struggle with this, with cancer, of like, I want to have a kid, another kid. How can I do that when I have this cancer diagnosis?
Yeah.
And like you said, like being pregnant, you could have all the symptoms in the world. You can't really do any detoxing, or you shouldn't, because
Right.
it's not great for the baby to be exposed to anything like that. So that can be so overwhelming as well for women. Do you see that in your practice when women try to kind of juggle the family life and the
Mhm.
cancer? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great question. One that is not talked about much because a lot of times they're just like, oh, no, you should never do that. But
Mhm.
I actually had another baby after that, baby number 7. And I've worked with quite a few women that have, you know, done the cancer journey and then they want to have babies because they're getting cancer younger and younger. And it's not just a standard like I am done having babies necessarily, or maybe they didn't even have babies beforehand. I've got a couple clients like that. So this is where the power of knowing their root cause drivers is really helpful because if you clean that up before the baby, not only are you going to have a healthier baby, because there's so much overlap with just like these are the same things that would cause you to have infertility, or like birth defects and things. But also, then you're going to know what to watch because clearly, when you get pregnant, your estrogen levels are going to go high as they should in order to have a baby. But that's one thing, it's not 7 or 8 things going wrong. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So then, we can monitor afterwards. Okay, let's make sure those estrogens are coming down appropriately, which in my case, when I got the cancer, they weren't. And so that we're not, having
Yeah.
things stack up. But it's a beautiful thing to be able to look at all those things, and we have the testing to do it, which is exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think that's really encouraging for women to hear that. Is like, if you have a cancer diagnosis, it doesn't mean that like you can't have more children. Like,
Yeah.
obviously you are the example of that. Because yeah, I just think it would be so stressful trying to manage all of that. And trying to make the best decision for yourself, and just juggling all of, yeah, and going back to the mental load of like family planning is just another thing that you have to add in.
Well, and I'm going to take that a step further, Brittany. So, like, what they usually do is they'll have you like harvest eggs and such because, especially if they're doing radiation and things where you're not going to be able to, you probably infertile afterwards. Those eggs are not going to be very healthy eggs if you have cancer. I mean, it's all tied together. Um, Now, if this helps women, like that last baby, that seventh baby I had when I was 43. And I'm just going to be super direct. Like, she is my healthiest child by far. It's pretty cool if you look at my history with 7 kids. You can watch and monitor the birth weights and directly see when I started eating healthy and when I started like really understanding how to take care of myself. Like, the birth weights went up, like, I mean, not in a bad way, like in a good way. And this is what Weston Price is talking about in all of his work, monitoring and looking at nutrition and how its effect on babies and such. But I mean, she's ridiculously healthy and beautiful and smart. And it's not like even if women don't have cancer, if they're just dealing with infertility, like there are things you can do to make sure that your baby's health, beauty, intelligence is optimized. And it's the same stuff we're talking about here,
Yeah. Yeah. So many people don't talk about that though. Like,
right?
so many people don't. Like, before I got pregnant, we did a preconception cleanse, me and my husband,
Nice.
for I think it was like 4 months. And I made a whole course about it. It's called Baby Steps. And I made it because I was looking for something. I was like, oh, we want to have a kid. Okay, let's become the healthiest versions of ourselves before we have the kid so that we
Exactly.
can have the healthiest baby. And I go online, I'm like, okay, like, what should I do? And it's like, oh, take a prenatal and don't drink alcohol. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
I'm like, that's it? What do you mean?
See, that's like what our standard of care is doing. It's the same thing in the infertility as in the oncological world. It's, in oncology, it's make the tumor go away. In infertility, it's make there be a baby. But it's
Yeah.
not talking about overall health. It's not talking about optimizing the health of the baby or optimizing the health of the lady with cancer. It's talking about just like bare minimum bar. And that to me, I want more for my health and for my clients' health, so that they can really have what they want out of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, One final word. What do you want everyone listening to remember?
I want them to know that there's tools out there to actually get so much more information, like with the testing, because I get told all the time, clients are like, my oncologist said you can't find out why you had cancer. I'm like, they can't because they're not trained in this, but you can find it out. Like there's just more out there than what the oncologists are trained in. The oncologists also say that diet doesn't matter. And when I say that, people get pissed because women know that it does matter. And it's offensive to hear somebody that should know better say that all the time. That's what I hear. So
Yeah.
just know there's more.
Yeah. Good. Oh, I love that. Yeah. There's so much more. So much more. Um,
Right.
if women listening want to work with you or connect with you in any way, how can they do that and where can they find you?
Yeah. My website is cancerfreedom.com. And, there's an application there. I'd love to hear from people. I'm also on Instagram. It's just my name at Katrina Foe.
Perfect. I will put that in the show notes and on the website so everyone can find you easily. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was great. And it was awesome just to hear about your story and how you can inspire other people, other women.
Thanks, Brittany. It's great to be here.